The simple and short answer to the title of the video is because of Ronald Reagan and all of his repeals during his administration. Now, if you want to go into the deeper dive, timestamps are below. But if you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, it's good to see you again. If you like the video at any point, then leaving one really helps out the channel. But without further ado, let's get into it. So why don't we see PSAs air on TV anymore? Well, again, simple answer is because of Ronald Reagan and his little slimy hands. But looking deeper into it, we have to go back to 1949, when the Fairness Doctrine was being enforced by the Federal Communications Council. In fact, the Fairness Doctrine came from something from 1929 called the Radio Act. The Radio Act was passed by Congress, and that's important to know. Now, within this doctrine that came from the Radio Act, it was mainly focused on the worry about monopoly within the broadcasting systems, specifically with NBC, ABC, and CBS. Three-letter organizations, you can never trust them.
FBI, open up!
Thank goodness I don't have any sawed-off shotguns or a dog, or a wife, or a son. That's a reference, by the way, and I'm not going to explain it. Anywho, the Fairness Doctrine mandated that these broadcast networks, and others, devote time for issues on public importance. This plus making sure that the broadcasters present fair and balanced coverage of controversial issues. And how they would do that is by allowing airtime for every single party. So let's say I don't like meatball subs, but that me standing over here does, right? Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. It's not exactly like that, but it's close enough. It pretty much was trying to give everyone a voice. At least when it came to TV and like broadcasting and all that fun jazz. The thing that you're watching this for. And I want to state again that Congress backed up the Fairness Doctrine. I mean, obviously, because they started the Radio Act, so why would they not, back the baby of it? And while I said a big focus within the Fairness Doctrine was making sure there wasn't a monopoly, another big focus was just making sure that it was in the public's interest. Now, for a simple-brained, hairy little man, 5'7's not little, I swear. A broken down version of that is the Fairness Doctrine was literally just trying to make everything fair on the TV, while also focusing on the public interest. And that part is important because public interest isn't so much selling you guys stuff, it's more informing you about stuff. Now, the Fairness Doctrine kind of sounds like it's a mixed bag, and that's going to actually be its downfall. You see, that part of focusing on making sure everyone has a voice to speak about their ideologies will come back to bite the Fairness Doctrine in its butt. Because one way of showing your ideology is with PSAs, and that's a good way of showing it. And that ideology is a bit vague, but that vagueness is just saying, hey, be safe out there, public, because we don't want to see you die because you're our citizens. But the other thing that the Fairness Doctrine allowed was pushing certain narratives. So for example, you could put up one political opponent while putting down another one, and then both teams can do vice versa. But the thing is, they each have equal airtime to do so. And the Fairness Doctrine was pretty much the big brother in that situation, because it said, hey, you guys can yell for this amount of time, which is 1 minute, and we're going to cut you off after 1 minute. You can't control the broadcasting systems like we do. And it's not controlling media, it's literally just controlling time. Which I understand some people might consider that censorship, but I don't think it is if it's simply just trying to allow everyone to have a voice. So if everyone has 1 minute to talk, that's not really censoring anyone. It's just setting up parameters. Let me remind you again, I will never claim to be smart. But what I imagine the Fairness Doctrine is, it's just a moderator for broadcasting systems. So now you might be wondering, how did Reagan fuck this up? Well, in 1985, under the new FCC chairman, FCC is the Federal Communication Council.
FCC won't let me be, or let me be me.
It's the one who introduced the Fairness Doctrine. I'm gonna say that again. It's the one who introduced the Fairness Doctrine. Okay, you get it? Cool. Mark S. Fowler, now the chairman of the FCC, used to serve under Reagan during his first term in his presidential staff. Well, all of a sudden, in Reagan's second term, the FCC, aka Reagan's butt buddy over there, released a report stating that the doctrine had actually hurt the public interest and violated free speech. Now, there is some more context to go into this, like cases where some guy was like, hey, I'm going to politically attack you saying you're a communist, because this was big back in the day. And this case happened in like 1969. I probably should have given you more research, but it's not really too important to the PSAs. But what you need to know about the case was some guy was defaming another guy, saying he's a communist, he's all this stuff, just throwing out a bunch of accusations without any merit. We've never seen that happen in today's politics, thank goodness. Anyway, this one guy was broadcasting a certain narrative against another guy on his radio station. And that other guy took the guy who was talking shit to court. Now, court said that the guy who was talking shit had the right to do so, albeit he didn't have the rights to the radio show. So if the radio show didn't want him to blabber his mouth, they could stop that. Regardless, that's all to say that someone like me who just like talks shit about someone else, like who's a bad person, if I talk shit about Ted Bundy saying he's a stupid piece of shit who only got lucky and wasn't actually smart, even though he thinks he's smart, but the cops were just dumb back then, and I broadcasted it out to you guys like this, and he was still alive, he could have sued me. But the thing is, I would have gotten away with saying all that shit about Ted Bundy because the courts will say something like, hey, YouTube, do you want Bear Bear to keep talking his shit or not? That's up to you. Again, that's all just to say that you're allowed to talk shit about someone else. That's what the Fairness Doctrine allowed. The only caveat is other people can talk shit about you equally. I think that's a pretty fair trade. But again, all of a sudden, the FCC is now saying that it violated free speech. Chairman Fowler began rolling back the application of the Fairness Doctrine, mainly during Ronald Reagan's second term. Now, a big reason for doing so is because a lot of broadcasting stations and news stations were, quote, lambasting Reagan's policies. So what did Ronald Reagan, the president, do? He just shut off the news stations. What a crazy world where the United States president would censor media. In 1987, the FCC panel, almost all Reagan-tied, voted to repeal the Fairness Doctrine altogether with a 4-0 vote. LeBron can't even come back from. I need to stop mentioning him. Now, Congress, who created the Radio Act, which was, the Fairness Doctrine's papa, they weren't just going to take this bent over or laying down. No, quotes from Congress were saying that this was a misguided, wrong-headed, and illogical move. Congress attempted to preempt the FCC decision, and it was passed through the first round of legislation. But do you know who it went to next? The president, Ronald Reagan, who vetoed it. And once it was vetoed, Congress wasn't able to get enough votes to overturn the president. And therefore, the Fairness Doctrine was officially repealed by Ronald Reagan and his staff, where they weaseled out into different jobs with a lot of power. One of the many amazing things that President Ronald Reagan did. God bless that man. Now, with all that gabagool, you might be wondering, how the fuck does this have anything to do with PSAs? You know, the thing that says, don't drink and drive, don't beat your kid with a sawed iron? Well, now with the Fairness Doctrine no longer in act, these broadcasters had no reason to air these PSAs, besides one thing. Now, can you guess what that one thing is? The world runs on it, and everyone, says that it doesn't buy happiness, but it does. Yep. Cocaine. No, money. So unless whoever's making a PSA can fork over enough money that can compete with things that are actually selling stuff that are making money back, then a PSA is not going to get airtime. Because if I'm a big greedy company, why would I do something that's for the good of the public when I could make money? What's this? You want to sell cigarettes and jewels to kids? Okay, you're going to pay me a fat check? We'll advertise to them. Oh, you think drinking and driving is important and we should get the word out? How much money do you have? Within the ripple effect of taking away the Fairness Doctrine, one of those ripples was making it where money was everything. And again, if you're selling a product, you're making money. If you're just showing a PSA, you might make some money, but it's nothing compared to what these companies are making, or what they're willing to give out to these broadcasters. Now, if you clicked on this video just for the title, the video is pretty much over right now. If you enjoyed it, you should leave a like. However, all of this mixes in with something else that I'm kind of interested in. I don't know if you remember, but back even when I was a kid, and much more before that, there were a lot of TV shows that were meant for kids that were focused about morals and just being a good person in society. You might notice today that every single TV show or movie that's directed towards kids is usually trying to sell you something. And I'm not talking about obvious product placement, but I'm talking about if you see Tom Holland in a new Spider-Man suit, you best believe those are going to be mass-produced toys. Hell, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Care Bear, those are all examples of TV shows that were literally just created to sell toys. And I'm mentioning all of this because it is important within the Fairness Doctrine. Beforehand, broadcasting networks had a lot of restrictions towards what you can show to kids. Mainly, there were hard restrictions on what you could advertise to kids. It was almost to the point where you just couldn't advertise to kids, and that is good. Kids should not be wanting to buy shit constantly. That's a tangent, we won't get on that. But that's why you saw those TV shows that were either focused mainly on the story or just teaching a good lesson. Because they didn't focus on trying to sell you something. Why? Because the money wasn't in it. Alright, I think that's enough. If you want to see more PSA related content, there's a playlist linked here somewhere. Bye-bye. Watch your back. No, seriously, watch your back.